Tottenham Hotspur, sitting 16th in the Premier League. Just sit with that for a moment. 16th. The last time this club was this irrelevant in April, dial-up internet was a thing and people thought flip phones were the future. And yes, it's not just the number. It's the energy. The aura. This is not a team that looks like it got unlucky with a few results. This is a team playing like it's auditioning for the role of confused tourist in the Premier League drama. And somehow, we've reached the point where Tottenham losing at home to Nottingham Forest isn't even considered an upset. It's just another thing that happens now. I mean, can we talk about the sheer absurdity of accepting this? We're at the business end of the season, and the word relegation is being whispered in connection with Spurs. Not shouted, not screamed in panic, but whispered. Because even that feels too dramatic for how this team is falling. They're not crashing. They're gliding downward like a paper airplane thrown by a very sad child. Forest come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and pick up a 2-1 win. Forest. Not a punchline anymore. They're not just here to make up the numbers, they're out here winning, climbing up to third in the table. They're walking around with Champions League energy while Tottenham are dragging themselves through matches like they're doing it as a community service sentence. And what's wild is how flat this match felt at first. Not in the lack of goals kind of way, but in the I cannot believe this is happening again kind of way. You could feel it from the crowd. The exasperation, the fatigue, that special kind of London angst that only Spurs can deliver. They didn't boo because they were angry. They booed because they're tired of being surprised. It's like getting hit with the same joke every week. At some point, it's not funny anymore. It's just sad. Forest, meanwhile, showed up like they had something to prove. They looked like the team with momentum, confidence, swagger, pick a buzzword, and not even in a fluke kind of way. They knew what they were doing. They came in with a plan, they executed it, and they got to kick their feet up for most of the second half, while Tottenham flailed around with the energy of someone trying to untangle headphones in the dark. But seriously, this is the part of the season where narratives solidify. The top four gets locked in. The bottom three begins its final gasps. And then there's Tottenham, floating somewhere in the lukewarm purgatory of the Premier League table, directionless, joyless, and apparently allergic to consistency. If this club were a weather pattern, it would be overcast, with sudden gusts of embarrassment. And the fact that we're just okay with this? That we're nodding along like, yep, Spurs in 16th, business as usual, is absolutely insane. It's like watching someone calmly water a burning house. You want to shout, you want to shake people, but they just look at you like you're the weird one. The phrase, a game of two halves, gets thrown around so much it's practically lost meaning. But this was a case study, a thesis paper, a full-on dissertation in how to play like two completely different teams over 90 minutes. Let's start with the first half. Tottenham, bless them, came out with all the urgency of a man trying to find matching socks on a Monday morning. Before fans could even nestle into their plastic misery pods at the stadium, they were behind. 5 minutes. That's all it took. Forest showed up like a team that hadn't just read the scouting report, they wrote it. They didn't wait, they seized the moment. Anderson, of all people, lashes one from outside the box through a crowd of bodies, and Vicario doesn't even dive. He just watches it like it's a museum piece. It's 1-0. Forest. And then, just to sprinkle some more self-loathing into the air in North London, Forest thought they had a second a few minutes later. Chris Wood, channeling his inner prime Shearer, volleyed it home, wheeled away, arms up. But wait, technology, our ever-faithful mood killer, intervened. Semi-automated offside. The kind of thing that sounds like it should be deciding Formula One races, not football goals. But fine. Spurs were let off. Briefly. 16 minutes in, Forrest said, no, seriously, here's the second goal. This time it counts. Alonga with a low, fizzing cross, Wood gets up like it's a trampoline day at the fair, and suddenly it's 2-0. Vicario again flapping in the general direction of the ball like someone waving at a train that already left the station. And then the rest of the half? Tottenham ran around a bit. They created some chances, to their credit. Odobert had a nice curling effort. Richarlison was doing his best impersonation of a striker with confidence. And Kulusevski was busy looking frustrated at everyone within 20 yards of him. There were flashes, decent build-up, a few spicy crosses, but nothing stuck. They led in expected goals at half-time, if that's the kind of thing that gives you comfort at night. 1.23 to Forest's 0.33. That's right, Forest had 2 goals on just a third of an expected goal. Tottenham, meanwhile, had nothing but maths and tears. Then came the second half. And here's the kicker. Tottenham actually looked like they remembered how to play football. Ange Postecoglou made changes. He had to. He ripped out his back line like it was a loose filling. Davies and Danso came on, a bit of reshuffling, a few silent prayers, and suddenly, Spurs started pushing. There was a purpose, a bit of structure. Forest, perhaps drunk on their own smugness, decided to sit back and admire the view. Always a dangerous move. Tottenham built and built, corner after corner, cross after cross. Porro, in particular, was whipping in deliveries like he was trying to unlock an achievement on some secret video game. And with each chance, the pressure mounted. There was the header from Richarlison, saved. The scramble in the box, cleared. The low drive that was almost diverted in, skewed wide. Forest were bending, creaking, but somehow never breaking. Sells, their goalkeeper, had one of those second halves that goalkeepers dream about when they're 8 years old and sleeping with gloves on. Eventually, in the 87th minute, Tottenham finally made the breakthrough. And of course, it was Richarlison. Porro delivers yet another cross, and the Brazilian heads it perfectly into the corner. 2-1. Stadium wakes up. Nervous energy floods the pitch. Could it happen? Could Spurs pull off the comeback? Spoiler, no. Forest held. Tottenham huffed. Richarlison shouted. Postecoglou looked like a man aging in real time. 5 minutes of added time passed like a slow funeral march. And when the final whistle blew, it wasn't rage in the stands. It was resignation. A collective sigh of, yep, this is our life now. From disaster in the first half to desperation in the second, Tottenham managed to fit an entire emotional spectrum into 90 minutes of football. It was chaotic, infuriating, occasionally thrilling, and ultimately pointless. Let's pull back a bit. Zoom out from the chaos and take in the wider picture, because this match wasn't just about goals or missed chances. It was about 2 clubs heading in opposite directions while occupying the same pitch. Like one train speeding toward the future and the other stalled in a tunnel, arguing with the conductor about snacks. Nottingham Forest. Remember them? The club that looked destined to be this season's plucky underdog story turned inconsistent mid-table mush? Yeah, well, that Forest seems to be dead and buried. What we're looking at now is something a bit more serious. Something resembling intent. Something resembling a proper football team with a plan, an identity, and, most heartbreakingly for Tottenham fans, a functioning midfield. Forest were clever. They didn't dominate the ball, and they didn't pretend they were going to. They came to North London with one thing in mind: execute. And they did. From minute 1. They pressed in flashes, picked their moments, and when they got into the final third, they didn't overcomplicate it. No 50-pass build-ups or philosophical questions about inverted fullbacks. Just get the ball wide, get it in the box, let Chris Wood do his tree trunk impression and batter it in. And it worked. Their first half goals weren't glamorous. They were direct, efficient, cold-blooded. The kind of goals you get when a team knows what it is. Anderson's opener was scrappy but driven. Wood's header was textbook. They didn't need 100 touches to create danger. Forrest saw a soft underbelly and stuck the knife in. Defensively, they were gloriously annoying. Milenkovic and Murillo were everywhere, blocking, heading, smothering. And Nico Williams played like he had a personal vendetta against anyone wearing white. Add Sells to the mix with his time-wasting masterclass and a couple of highlight reel saves, and you've got a team that knew how to suffer. That's the highest praise in football these days, isn't it? They know how to suffer. Forest did that, and they enjoyed every single second of it. And now? Now they're third. Third. Champions League territory. Just let that simmer for a bit. Nuno Espirito Santo, whose Spurs reign ended with all the enthusiasm of a Monday morning dentist appointment, has now guided Forest into a European dream. Football, you are a weird, weird game. Now let's talk about Tottenham. If Forest were a symphony of ugly competence, Spurs were a garage band playing off-key with no drummer. This team is lost. Identity? Strategy? Nope. Just vibes. Bad ones. It's not like they didn't try. The second half was full of effort. You could almost feel the desperation oozing off the pitch. They threw bodies forward, flung crosses into the box like it was a raffle draw, and hoped Richarlison could win the match through sheer force of will. But there was no coordination, no tempo, no understanding between lines. Just chaos, wrapped in anxiety, dressed as football. And here's the kicker. It's not even surprising anymore. Tottenham are like that friend who always promises they've changed but shows up late to every event and ruins dinner by talking about cryptocurrency. You want to believe them. But the evidence is just never there. And don't get me wrong, there were players who tried. Porro ran himself into the ground. Richarlison didn't stop fighting. But this wasn't a team performance. It was 11 panicked musicians each playing their own tune, hoping it somehow turns into a song. Postecoglou, for all his charisma and quotable pressers, looked out of ideas. His substitutions were like a man throwing darts with his eyes closed. Solanke, Johnson, Bergvall, they were thrown on like spaghetti at a wall and none of it stuck. So where does that leave us? Forest, somehow improbably, are dreaming of Champions League nights and away days in Italy. Tottenham, they're dreaming of, I don't know, a reset button? A time machine? Something? Anything that could undo the mess they've created. Two clubs, two very different places, but for 90 minutes they shared a pitch, and only one of them walked off looking like they knew why they were there. Let's crack open this last layer of the match, the individual performances. Because yes, football is a team sport and all that, but when the ship is either sailing or sinking, we've got to look at who's at the wheel and who's duct taping the hull together with raw effort and trauma. Let's start with Richarlison. Honestly, the man was raging against the dying of the light. He didn't score until the 87th minute, but his performance was dripping in desperation and bite. He was everywhere, flicking headers, chasing shadows, begging for some sort of service with hands thrown to the heavens. That goal, a perfect, gliding header off yet another Porro delivery, buried with the accuracy of someone who's had to hear, "He's just not clinical" every week. He gave them a lifeline. A rope out of the pit, and of course, no one else grabbed it. Pedro Porro, too, deserves some credit. The man was crossing like his life depended on it. He could have sent letters home via his right foot with the amount of deliveries he sent into the Forest box. A couple of them were overhit, sure, but it's hard to blame him when half the team looks allergic to timing a run. He defended with energy, surged forward like a caffeine-fueled fullback, and still had enough in the tank to play provider in the final minutes. On the other side, poor Mathis Tell. He looked like a glitch in the system. Full of energy, yes, but there was a real sense of someone pressing sprint in the wrong moments and crossing into the void. He had flashes, made good runs, pulled defenders, but lacked final product like a baker forgetting the flour. He's got raw talent, but this game exposed how lonely that can look when nobody's on the same frequency. Then there's Kulusevski. Oh, Dejan. He played like he was stuck in a loop, driving into defenders, turning back, yelling at the air. It was as if every one of his touches came with a complementary existential crisis. He's not just frustrated with his teammates. He looks frustrated by football itself. The Swede is clearly talented, but this version of Spurs is chewing him up and spitting out a tired, cynical shell of a player. In midfield, Bentancur and Sarr were the equivalent of two people trying to bail water out of a sinking boat with colanders. Moments of promise? Sure. A few clever passes, a couple of tackles, but it never felt like they were in control. Bentancur in particular looked exhausted, physically and emotionally, like he's been asked to mediate a family feud at every kickoff. It's not that they were bad, they were just not enough. Defensively, where to even start? Romero was booked early, again, because of course he was. Van de Ven looked like he missed the memo entirely. Both were hooked at half-time, which was probably the nicest thing Postecoglou could have done for them. Spence looked shaky, unsure whether to push forward or hold, and by the end he was essentially a decoy. Davies and Danso came on and existed, I guess? It was one of those performances where they didn't make it worse, which somehow feels like a win in this season's bizarre context. Vicario, the goalkeeper, had a rough day at the office. 2 shots on target from Forest, 2 goals. Not all his fault, obviously. Anderson's strike had the pace of a runaway train, and Wood's header was clinical. But still, You want your keeper to come up big in moments like these. He didn't. Now, flip the pitch. Let's talk Forest. Chris Wood was a menace. 18 goals this season, and he looks like he's enjoying himself again. That header, a classic target man finish, rose at the right time, picked his spot, punished indecision. He's not flashy. He's not fast, but he's effective, and he knows it. Elliot Anderson deserves a whole poem. He was everywhere. Scored the opener with a strike that barely had a pulse on expected goals, bossed the midfield with drive and precision, and looked like he was running on spite and ambition. Won duels, tracked back, launched counterattacks. He basically lived in Tottenham's blind spots. Sells, in goal, had the kind of performance that makes fans fall in love. He saved a bullet header from Richarlison, danced around time-wasting cards with smug efficiency, and commanded his box like a man who's just had a good night's sleep and a bigger purpose. Gibbs White had a quieter day, but you always felt his fingerprints on Forest's creativity. He was less conductor, more sneaky hand guiding the wheel, played smart balls, drew fouls, and kept Spurs midfielders busy chasing him like confused mall cops. The defenders, a brick wall. Milenkovic and Murillo were ruthless. Williams and Toffolo covered every blade of grass and at least 3 extra dimensions of space. They weren't just playing defense, they were orchestrating controlled chaos, clearing headers, blocking shots, snarling into every tackle. If Tottenham had any joy, it came in spite of them. In the end, this match wasn't just about tactics or luck. It was about individuals stepping up or shrinking. Forest's players looked like they were hungry. Tottenham's looked like they were stuck in a dream where they forgot how legs work. So that's the tale. Not of one match, but of 2 mentalities, clashing under stadium lights, exposing more than just the scoreboard. This has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.